everybody.
Hi everyone, happy to have you here.
Yes, as always, we love doing these videos and it's just so much fun.
Yes, it is. So we have a topic today that was inspired by a live video we did last night with one of our dear friends about paving the way to purpose. And it got us talking about how, well, we serve vegans who are feeling unfulfilled in their lives. And this could be brought on by a multitude of reasons. But we were like, you know what? Let's talk about what we see in those who are fulfilled versus those who aren't. And we can use ourselves as an example, as well as stories we've gone through and experienced in our own lives, and of course looking at the people that we've helped reach this fulfillment too.
And then also creating this roadmap for you to reach fulfillment, because that's exactly what we've done. We've created a 9-step method for you to go from point A to point B seamlessly. Now, I say seamlessly with quotation marks because there is some bumpy...
if it ain't bumpy, you ain't going nowhere.
Exactly. There could be some bumps along the way, but we have created this roadmap and we've seen it work. Because why? We first started out doing this ourselves, and from all of our years of personal development, we've found that this roadmap really works the best.
Absolutely. And so we compiled a list of the top 4 main reasons why people who are fulfilled are fulfilled. And of course, there's little points in between. But we want to encourage you, even if you're not vegan, to listen and watch this video, because you're going to find value out of this as well. It'll at least get those gears turning. This is a topic that could also be philosophically discussed. So, this is just our personal findings. So, one of the main reasons why people who are fulfilled is because they find and work towards a purpose, or they find purpose in what they're already doing. So, what does that mean? Well, so let's just talk about purpose for a moment. Purpose doesn't have to be some grandiose, huge thing, right? It's about finding meaning in everything that you do. Although some people do have a dream to build something, right? To become a thought leader or a change maker. But there are also some people that do find purpose and fulfillment in other jobs, like being a garbage man or being a janitor. Like, there's no comparing what's better for the world and what isn't. What it matters is what makes you feel good.
Exactly. And you know what? A great example of this would be somebody in our neighborhood. So there's a gentleman that actually works and spends all of his time as a volunteer to help kids cross the street. And let me tell you, we will post a little bit more about him. His name is Mo, and he is one of the
happiest, joyful men you'll ever meet in your life.
Oh my gosh, like just an incredible spirit, and wishes everybody just the best day as they drive by and cheers them on, and that is his purpose in life, and he makes everybody around him happy and feeling good.
And spreading that joy through a smile is so impactful. So we don't want to sit here and compare what is a better purpose than other purposes. We just want to help people find that meaning and be able to feel that they have meaning in their lives, right? So, in order to find this purpose or build this dream, whichever way it might mean to you, it means spending time with yourself, really learning about yourself to know what does make your heart sing. And so people who are fulfilled, they know themselves. They know what they need. They know what they don't need. They spend the time identifying their values, what's most important to them, their fundamental driving forces. What can they learn about themselves to shed ego attachments? What is it that they need to become fulfilled?
And I want to use a little bit of an example of myself. So for me, I was really not living a fulfilling life. Sure, I was happy-go-lucky and I was enjoying my life, and I was doing well by social means, by societal means. I was working in the corporate world and really climbing the corporate ladder. So what did I decide to do? Well, after years of doing this, I knew deep down inside that I had a bigger purpose. I just didn't know what that purpose was. I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing in the world. There was something missing. So
Hmm.
I decided to change my environment. I decided that I would join the Peace Corps. I would move halfway across the world to Tanzania, Africa, and
Figure it out.
figure it out. I don't know. I didn't know what was going to come of it. I knew that there was going to be a lot of tough times emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically, all of the
Hmm.
above. And that was a time for me not only to serve a community, but also to serve myself, to go within myself, to examine all of those things that weren't making me fulfilled. And how could I then align my values, align my passions for serving others and helping others into a purpose?
Right, right.
And so this took time to develop, but after, a few years, here I am,
Absolutely. And that's a prime example of creating pathways to reach that purpose. So, in his case, he needed to dismantle everything that he knew to
Mhm.
be comfortable to learn who he was underneath it all. And that is just one of the many steps on a pathway to reach that purpose. And it can take a long time. You don't just wake up and all of a sudden know what your purpose can be, right? So, another thing that fulfilled people do is to create these pathways to their purpose is they are willing to shed what is holding them back. In his case, leaving that corporate job. In my case, leaving the unfulfilling, sabotaging relationships that I was in, right? So it's about understanding, okay, something's got to change. I've got to start building pathways to find my purpose and to reach it. So, what can I get rid of in my life that's holding me back?
And I want to note that first step of jumping into the unknown, and that is one thing that I think holds a lot of us back from actually ever
Mm-hmm.
finding our purpose, is that notion of, oh man, like I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can get out of the this comfort zone that I'm in to be uncomfortable. But that is the first and arguably one of the most important steps to finding this
Mm-hmm.
purpose, to becoming fulfilled.
If you're not a little afraid, you're probably not reaching high enough,
Uh-huh.
right? So, it's important to note though that purpose can shift as one's awareness of oneself also shifts. So, what you might find connected and soulful and purposeful in your life could be that way for 10 years, and then it may shift as you grow more into yourself and realize that you have other things to offer and use to help others. But I think that we could say most people who are feeling fulfilled, it's because they are on a regular basis connected with not only themselves but other people.
Yes.
So, when we find meaning in our lives, it's typically the parts of our lives that are most interacting with other people and helping them in some form or fashion.
Well, and I do believe that it's somewhat ingrained in our DNA to be able to serve others and to help others. And again, like Sarah mentioned before, this doesn't have to be in this grand way. It could be very simple and small. So
Mhm.
there's different ways we can go about doing this.
Absolutely. So, number two of what makes fulfilled people fulfilled is they are not victims of circumstance. Now, hear me out on this because when a lot of people talk about the subject, it can hurt people's feelings. They might, think that nobody's sympathizing or empathizing with them. Look, I get it. Life can be really tough. We have a lot of external influences and factors that we cannot control, right? And so these are opportunities that we can choose to either A, become victims of our circumstances, or B, overcome them.
Hmm.
And you know, people who are fulfilled, it doesn't mean that they're just so lucky and they scraped by without any bad thing ever happening to them. No, it means that they made the decision to not become victimized by it. It doesn't mean they didn't suffer. It doesn't mean they didn't wallow in their sorrows for a little bit. They're not perfect people either. It's they learned how to get out of the trenches and back into, you know, building their dream.
And using that pain or suffering as a
Mm-hmm.
catalyst to get them to the point that they want to
Mm-hmm.
be at. Because when we use pain and suffering as something that, well, we're victimized and it just drags us down, and
Mm-hmm.
poor me and all of these things, then we're going to continue to live that way, and we're never going to get out of the waters that are
Mm-hmm.
drowning us.
Mm-hmm.
But if we can use that as a catalyst to catapult us and to level our lives up even further, further.
Absolutely. And I can relate to that profoundly. For those of you who do already know who we are and know a little bit background on our story, it's no secret. We've got it on our website. We speak about it when we travel and talk about our keynote topic of finding health, happiness, and connection in the vegan lifestyle. I understand what it's like to be a victim of circumstance, but to be able to climb out of the mentality of victimization. Having been sexually assaulted in a very brutal way while serving as a Peace Corps volunteer in Africa, I get it. All of a sudden, your life is just not what it was the day before. Okay, everything you knew to be true is suddenly turned upside down on its head, and you don't know what's coming next. You don't know who to trust, who to talk to. It's chaotic. You don't even know who you yourself is in that moment. And that's a very extreme case, but this happens often where this is an easy chance to become victimized by one's circumstances. It's a very easy opportunity. It would have been easier for me to become a victim than it was for me to overcome it, because that meant I had to sit with the darkness. I had to find meaning in the darkness. I had to find balance in even fear and pain and sorrow and anxiety. But the interesting thing is, you learn so much about yourself in these moments, and from that I was able to grow a stronger person. And so, when we use it to our advantage, we're able to reach fulfillment faster and better than if we were to just wallow in our sorrows. And I'm not saying that those who are stuck in these particular situations, especially sexual assault, I'm not saying that you're weak for still feeling victimized. We're all at a different point of our journey, so please understand that. But that's something that has helped me to overcome those challenging situations and move forward to build my dream, because I do want to mention that happiness, in my opinion, is not a fleeting, superficial emotion like we think it is. It's actually, from my experience, happiness is the product of the ability to be fundamentally grateful, right? Even when everything is falling apart around us. So even in the midst of all that chaos, sure, I might be crying one minute, depressed the next, but if someone would have said, "But are you happy?" I would have said yes. I might not be smiling right now, but I'm still happy because I'm grateful that I'm alive. I'm grateful that I have the support system that I did. And you can always find something to be grateful for.
And that's why it's so important to build a strong internal community, a strong internal environment, something that you can go to and go within yourself at all times to find that happiness. And yeah, like she said, things are going to happen in life. There's always going to be situations we're faced with. But how do we go into those situations? That's the question. How are we going to react in those situations, those tough times that we face?
Absolutely. And fulfillment doesn't come from a perfect life. People who are fulfilled don't live perfectly. They still have sadness. They still have bad days, right? And it's knowing that these emotions are normal and that your bad days are just as important as your good days. Mm-hmm. You are perfect the way that you are. So instead of running away from the pain and running away from the bad days, sit with it, learn from it, be it. Let it take you over for as long as you need to, but just avoid getting stuck in it.
Exactly.
So, number 3.
Okay, let's move on.
Number
resourceful.
3. People who are fulfilled are resourceful human beings. This is another sensitive topic because, oh my, how we feel that we are not in control of some of these things. So, my dad actually posted a meme on my Facebook page today that I really liked. And essentially, it took the phrase, "I can't afford it," and shifted it to, "How can I afford it?" That's when we get our brain to start working for us. So, resources, it could be time, money, knowledge. I find that money and time is probably the biggest stumbling blocks for people.
I would say so. And a really good example to go along with this, and I'll keep it short, but for us, starting our own business, fulfilling our purpose, which obviously we've stated what that is. But for us to go into business and do this, obviously, number one, took a leap of faith. But number two, it took resources, right? It
Mm-hmm.
took us being resourceful. It took us to spend money and go into debt in order to fulfill this purpose, because you ultimately have to spend money to end up making it, right? We also dedicated hours and hours and hours of our own time to dedicate to this purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is that shift in your mentality to be able to then become resourceful in then fulfilling whatever it is that you would like to fulfill.
Exactly. So it's about taking that phrase, I can't afford it, and shifting it to, how can I afford it? It
Mhm.
might be true in your current situation. You honestly cannot afford that. That's not necessarily your fault or your problem, but to shift it, say, how can I afford it? Then you can start building pathways to make it possible to come up with that money. Same thing with, I don't have time. Well, shift that to, how can I make time? What do I need to change in my life that will make time for this?
Do I have to wake up an hour earlier? Do I
Mm-hmm.
have to
Sacrifice my 2 hours of Netflix binge watching, things of that sort. You can also take the phrase, I don't have the experience or the knowledge, and shift it to, what do I have to do to gain the knowledge? What do I have to do to get the experience? And it might take a while, but that's okay. We live in this quick fix society, and that's why I think so many of us are unfulfilled, because we expect it to just happen. And that's unrealistic.
Well, or maybe possibly a material thing will make us happy. Sure, it's that fleeting
Mm-hmm.
happiness, though, that in that moment I get this, you know, X thing and I feel grateful and happy inside, but what am I moving on to the next day, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
it's finding, and like I said, building that strong internal community.
Absolutely. And another thing along the topic of being resourceful, fulfilled people, they recognize what they do have and they use it to their advantage. And that helps them to create more pathways to get the
Hmm.
resources. They also learn when to shed the behaviors, the habits, the relationships, anything that's holding them back from getting the proper resources. Get rid of it. They get rid of it, and then they build pathways to access those resources, possibly asking themselves, who can help, support, or teach me to get the resources I need. So it's about networking, it's about branching out, it's about asking for a friendship that can support you. It's about making a trade, making an offer. What can you do in exchange for something that will help put you one foot further on your path? So, I think it can be really daunting. I know that in the beginning for us, particularly with building this business, oh my God, it was so daunting. But all we could do is put one foot in front of the other and figure out, okay, we don't have this resource. What can we do to get this resource? Do we have to pick up extra jobs? Do we have to sell the car? Do we have to move in with the parents? All kinds of things. You have to sacrifice sometimes the things that you want to get the ultimate picture.
Exactly, and we have to be willing to invest that time too, because it does take time. These things don't happen overnight,
Mm-hmm.
but if we're patient and if we have faith in
Mm-hmm.
the process that we're doing the right thing, it doesn't mean failures aren't going to come along the way, because there's many of them.
But that's
But
part of success.
again, how do we rebound from that? How do we
Mm-hmm.
overcome that?
How do we learn from it and use it to our advantage? And I also want to say that this goes along with number 4 of what fulfilled people do, and it kind of trails off of number 3. Some people, there are marginalized groups of our society that are oppressed by the system, and they do not have access to resources. They're in a different environment than perhaps what Chris and I grew up with in typical privileged communities because of the way the system is created. So I'm not saying that this resourcefulness always applies to every single person in the world, but I think that it's important to note that there are fulfilled people who do not have access to the same resources that many of us do
What
today.
about my village in Africa?
Exactly. We've lived in poverty. So why don't
Hmm.
you tell them a little bit about that?
So, from my experience living in isolation and also living in a poverty stricken village in Tanzania, a lot of the people you walk around and it's really different from America, where a lot of people, you may be walking down the street, they have their head down, they have their head in their phone, they're just, there's just this
Cut
not the
off.
synergy. Everything is cut off. People there, head up high, lifted, smiling. Well, most people will be like, how is this possible considering their situation?
Spending hours a day to fetch water, spending hours a day with hard labor of
Hmm.
farming or building houses, spending all day washing clothes by hand, building fires to make food for their family,
I
cleaning.
mean, I could remember some of the what we call the mamas in my village. Going to get water from the river would be a 3 mile trip there and back.
Hmm.
Okay, and they're carrying buckets of water on top of their head for 3 miles.
And some of these people were the happiest people we've ever met.
Hmm.
And that's where you get into philosophy too, of like what really is fulfillment. And that's where you start to think, are you fulfilled because of success? And if so, what's your definition of success? So fulfillment is different for everyone.
Well, and for the example that I wanted to use is, so one of my projects in my village was to help a group of 10 women, and this is something that my counterpart and I put together in the village to help them create a sustainable business that would then help them provide more for their families. And really, all we did was teach them about business, how to start a business, and ways that we can hopefully, fulfill this dream of having a village community eatery, a restaurant, right? And so for weeks, we taught and we taught and we taught, and they then pulled together
Their
everything
own resources,
everything they had, their buckets, their pots, their pans, and then the food
vegetables.
they had that they were growing on their farm. So any of the crops that maybe they weren't or couldn't use for their family, they would then put together and put it into this community pool, and they would use this food to then serve to the community, obviously to make
Hmm.
money, $1, $2 a plate of rice and beans. But this
Hmm.
is something that now has sustained them for the past. I left in 2015, I think it was, and they're still going because I do one of my good
Tanzanian
friends,
counterpart.
Peter. He still lives in the village, so he gives me reports on what's happening. But the point is that they found the resources that they needed to make their dreams come true.
And some might argue, oh well, they had a Peace Corps volunteer, so that's what made it possible. But they still used their own resources. They just branched out to someone who could help give them the knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
There are some people who don't have access to Peace Corps volunteers, right? We're not saying this whole world has to be resourceful to reach fulfillment, though. That's what we're saying, is that even people who don't have the resources that we think we need to be fulfilled, they're still fulfilled to some degree. And I know that there's a case in which they aren't as well. But what we find in people like that is they're willing to shift their perspective. So that's what we're trying to get at for the fourth thing that makes people fulfilled, is they're willing to shift their perspective in whichever situation they're in. And I think that's incredibly brilliant, because if you absolutely cannot change your current situation, if you have exhausted all of your options, you just cannot see a way around it, you've branched out to people who could help you see ways around it, and it's just working against you 100%, that's where you shift your perspective. And trust me, I get it. It must be harder than it looks, right? Like, it's not easy to just change your thought patterns. But through practice and time with personal development, it can be done, and people
Mm-hmm.
do it every day. So, that kind of goes along with being victimized by your circumstances. People who do not have access to resources are able to use their mind to change that perspective and pull out of this victimization role. I don't know. I think that it's really inspiring that no matter where we are at in life, we can find a way, we can find a pathway to fulfillment. And to remember, too, that fulfillment doesn't need to be something that you're chasing. It's all part of the journey. The tough days, the dark days, the unfulfillment, that's just as important as the fulfillment. But I think ultimately we want to work towards fulfillment because we know that elevates consciousness, that helps inspire other people to move after their purpose and build their dream. So
Exactly.
that's why we're helping people reach fulfillment.
Yes, and so this 9 step method that we have created, that will give to you and show you exactly the 9 steps and how we take you along that journey, and you can start to implement some of these strategies into your own life. But sometimes you need that extra support, that extra accountability, and so we have a total program that would walk you through this in 6 months, where you then would come out transformed,
Self-aware, whole.
self-aware, whole person. And so we just really are excited about this process,
Hmm.
and it's something that we would love to pass
Share
on
with
to
you.
you.
Absolutely. So, if you are particularly a vegan, because that's the community we serve, if you are a vegan who is just ready to transform your life in every way possible, I'm talking the vegan who wants to take charge, not the vegan who's like, sure, why not? I'm talking about the vegan who's sitting here at this computer going, give me this program now. We want you. We want to talk to you. So we want to offer you a free clarity call, hour and a half tops, right? Sign up with us in the link provided for a free chat to talk about where you are currently, where you want to go, what's not working, what's standing in your way, and how we could potentially help you get to where you want to be.
Absolutely.
So,
I think that about does it.
we'd love to hear your thoughts, your comments. Leave them below, and we're happy to have you here. We'll be around for another video soon.
See you guys.